Hello, what's up? This is gonna be my prescription drug haul. I'm turning into a Donna Tartt character. The metamorphosis is almost complete. No, genuinely, she's had yet another medical crisis, and so I am currently on the absolute most horrifying cocktail of medications. We've been roughing it. I just want to talk about the things that I've been reading recently. The last video that I did before the Twilight one was a haul video, and I have read through all of those books except for Sense and Sensibility. So in this video, I just want to talk about them, basically. I am adoring Sense and Sensibility so far. I'm not reviewing it in this video, but I'm enjoying it enough where I think I might like to do a just a review video on that. Okay, so I actually have this other book over here. The first one from that haul video that I read was The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. Yeah, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. So I liked it. I did not like it as much as The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary, which is kind of weird because, you know, the Goodreads ratings are kind of the opposite, where people don't like The Road Trip and they like this one. Like, I know it's ridiculous for me not to expect sexism in romance, but there was some, like, moments in this that were really sexist and, like, just, like, comments about, like, oh, yeah, like, you know, if you want to get a man, you need to shave your legs and you need to blah, blah, blah. It was just, like, okay, like, I can't really relate, but yeah, so I don't know, this was fine. I thought the chemistry was fine. It was a little bit dramatic, but it was overall an enjoyable read, so read it if you want. I'm not gonna give it massive accolades though. Okay, and then the next, God, I keep forgetting to bring them over here. The next thing that I read is Prisons We Choose to Live Inside. It's basically like a series of essays on, like, how to fix the world, kind of how like tribalism is bad, and yeah, and so she talks about how social change should actually happen and could actually happen. She kind of laments that we live in an age where we know more than we ever have about the ways the human mind operates and the ways that tribalism operates and all that stuff, and yet we don't appear to be using it. And I did find this a little bit outdated because this is from 1987. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. I thought she certainly had good ideas, and I think that plenty of people would find this book surprising and challenging. For me, a lot of these ideas are kind of things that I already thought, and there wasn't too much happening that really made me go, oh, I never thought of that before. So if you are like me and you're like super already kind of like a heterodox progressive, I don't know how much you'll get out of this. If you know, are basically like a blue check progressive, then maybe give it a try. It might be challenging and interesting for you. So the next thing that I read after this was Not the Girls You're Looking For by Amina May Safi. I read Tell Me How You Really Feel by Amina May Safi, which is like this like cute young adult romance between a filmmaker and a cheerleader. It's a lesbian romance, so it was really enjoyable, actually. I really enjoyed that one. This one was so bad I had to DNF it. And this was her debut novel, and I found that really shocking because normally agents are really harsh on debut novelists, so I found myself thinking, like, how the hell did this get published? Who looked at this manuscript and was like, hell yeah, that is the thing that I'm gonna stake my livelihood on to represent?
How long have you had these droids?
About 3 or 4 seasons.
They're up for sale if you want them.
Let me see your identification.
You don't need to see his identification.
We don't need to see his identification.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
There is no plot. And by the way, I don't mind like a slow book. This had no plot and it was like the shallowest, weirdest shit. Like, you guys know those movies or TV shows where it's like, I'm thinking of like Megan is Missing, where it's like, oh, this is like a gritty, like real representation of what it means to be a teenager. This is the real shit and it's gonna make you uncomfortable. And it's usually written by some like borderline pedophile guy who like has no idea what teenage girls are actually like. And it's just really uncomfortable, and like all the teenagers constantly talk about how much like crazy depraved sex they have. Literally, that's what this book is, except it's written by a woman. And so I was sitting there and I was like, is this some kind of psyop? Was this woman never a teenage girl? Or maybe she was like super sheltered and she's, I'm speculating. This is very inappropriate, so do not take my word for this. But like, I don't know, it came across as like she must have been extremely sheltered and maybe she's imagining what other teenage girls were like. Because literally, like, these girls in this friend group will literally be like, oh yeah, I was such a slut freshman year of high school. I did blah, 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 and it'll be like just like, ugh. And it's just like very uncomfortable. And then she'll be like, oh, you missed out on a good time, if like one of the girls said that she didn't start dating until sophomore year or something. It's very, very uncomfortable, and like the girls are all really mean to each other. All the women are super catty and weird, and like she like shows up to this celebration for Ramadan and like a woman will just be like, oh hey, and like she'll just be like, oh, I could see the gleam of hatred in her eyes. We could all just pretend to get along at least. Like, it's just very weird. Anyway, don't read it. The next thing that I read is Jodi Picoult's I Wish You Were Here. This is basically a COVID novel, and it is about this woman who has her whole life planned out, and she's like, okay, I found the ring in the back of the dresser that my fiance, who is like a fucking surgeon, is going to propose to me with when we go on our trip to the Galapagos Islands in March 2020. And basically she goes on this trip without him because he gets stuck at the hospital because they're like, yeah, it would be unwise to leave right now. And so he's like, fuck, I have to. And so he's like, well, these are non-refundable tickets, non-refundable plans. You should just go without me, so at least it's not wasted money. And she goes, and she gets stuck there. Like, nothing is open. She can't find food. She doesn't speak Spanish. And it's just like a very, very like scary situation. Every once in a while, the spotty internet connection clears up and she gets these horrifying emails from her boyfriend just about the state of things in the hospital. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. There is a plot twist in this that I thought I liked it and I didn't like it. It is a very big plot twist. This novel kind of avoids itself with the plot twist, I think. And I felt like there were just some threads that were unresolved. There were just like certain character threads that were snipped off very quickly and abruptly, and we never really get any kind of deeper understanding of those, no resolution. I kind of liked the spiritual angle that this book took about everything. I liked its attempts at making meaning. This really helped me process everything that's happened for the past few years. So I would recommend it in that way. Gorgeous nature descriptions in this. I definitely disagreed with the main character's like final decision at the end of the book. I think she's a little bit dumb for doing that. Sometimes the free spirit impulse is actually just really shallow and self-centered, and that's kind of what I got from that in this. But I guess you could read that as a tragic thing too. COVID made us shallow and self-centered because we were all locked up in our bubbles. So, I mean, it could be interested in that way. I certainly think this book has a lot of interesting things to say. I would recommend this if you're looking for some COVID catharsis. I did read The Scarlet Pimpernel. I don't know where that is on my shelf. This is a classic novel from the early 1900s. It is considered to be the first superhero story. I think it's an absolute delight. I would definitely recommend you read it, especially if you like French Revolution time period stories, basically about the Scarlet Pimpernel rescuing aristocrats and bourgeoisie people from the guillotine. The writing style was absolutely delightful. I think there were a couple of themes in it that I really enjoyed. 3 out of 5 stars. It's a very easy to read classic as well, so if you don't normally like classics, I still would highly recommend checking it out. You do have to read it slowly though, because it's very efficient writing. Literally every word counts. If you space out for half a second, you'll miss a bunch of important information. The next thing that I read is another debut novel. This is Digging Up Love by Chandra Blumberg. I wrote a long review of this on Goodreads. Basically, this is about a cook, who is the woman, of course, and a paleontologist, who is the man, of course. Basically, the cook lives in rural Illinois in the United States, and her grandparents discover like a dinosaur skeleton in their backyard, and so the guy comes out to excavate it basically and study it. And it's love at first sight. And I think the description of when she first sets eyes on him is like her knees nearly gave out and her stomach turned itself inside out. And I was reading that and I was just like, is she okay? like what's gonna happen when he gives her an orgasm? It's just gonna be like a nuclear Chernobyl event. This book was extremely bloated, 300 to 400 pages. There's no reason for it to be that long. God, it's so soulless and corporate. It's really shallow. This is a real passage from this book. The post wasn't as cohesive as she'd like because all the interruptions had zapped her concentration, but better than skipping a day. Blogging and social media offered a baked-in clientele for when it came time to launch her cookie shop, and consistently sharing fresh content and unique flavor profiles had earned her a loyal following. Anyone that is like this enthusiastic about social media and like the algorithm is very creepy to me, and I don't trust them. This book is so bloated and there's so many scenes in it that have no bearing on the plot. There are several page sequences where it is the main character and the love interest texting, and it's literally like he sent a Barney gif. She sent a Land Before Time gif. He said, "Damn, that's crazy. I used to love that show." Is this a book for 12-year-old? Like, both of the characters in this are in their, like, 30s. And they act like they are actually, like, there's nothing wrong with sending animal gifs, by the way, but it's just, like, as a writer, you could have summed that up and just like, oh yeah, they've been texting, here's how she feels about it, blah, blah, blah. Like, unless the texts are like really significant and we need to see them in the exact text format, like, generally you don't want to do that and like include text conversations. Like it was very like hashtag relatable. These characters certainly act like they are like teenagers or something, and I think this author would have been better off writing like a young adult novel if she wanted to do something like this. Like, they're so embarrassed about sex. The guy will be like planning a date with her or whatever, and he'll be like, okay, sweet, like, let's do it. And then he'll have this internal monologue where he's like, I wasn't talking about sex. I don't know, do people really act like this? Also, like, the whole premise of the novel is kind of flawed. Like, the protagonist really comes across as a woman that just, like, genuinely needs to focus on herself and her business, and she, from the get-go, basically tells the guy that she isn't mature enough or ready enough for a relationship. Like, she hasn't healed from her last thing. The guy just, like, keeps pursuing her in spite of that, and it's like, I think it might have been fine if they had established a relationship and then she started doing that, because then it's like, well, you've seen enough of somebody at that point to know if they're, like, self-sabotaging or whatever. you know, trying to push you away as like an act of self-sabotage. Like, that would make sense, but like, he wasn't even her boyfriend and he kept pushing it. And it's like, dude, if somebody tells you that they don't want a relationship and they're not ready, you move on and you search elsewhere. This is a major spoiler, but I don't care because you shouldn't read this book. He names a dinosaur after her when she's not even his girlfriend and they haven't spoken for months. I'm okay with overbearing in some instances. Like, I'm a Twilight apologist. Edward is a mess, but ultimately, like, it's still so fun to read, and I think that that romance really works. This romance was overbearing in a way that was not sexy and not fun and just did not work at all. Just like the over-the-top reactions and stuff, you know, the inability to talk about sex or any serious things. They went on like 2 dates together. Okay, also, the woman is a giant pick-me, and she, like, refuses to let this rich professor pay for, like, gas station food for her. He, like, comes over for dinner one night, and she refuses to let him do the dishes, even though that's what men are supposed to do when, like, they're your guest in your family's home. And she's like, no, I literally won't let you do the dishes. And it's like, sis, you're already exchanging Barney gifts. I mean, you pretty much got him. So I don't know what the point is of, you know, doing all of that. Don't read this. I don't think this writer is, like, bad necessarily. This was not a good book. After that, I needed to read something dark. Against my better judgment, I read The Sluts by Dennis Cooper. Regretfully, for the sake of my morals, I actually did enjoy this. No, I wouldn't recommend that you read it. You would probably get the same experience as you would reading this book watching like a Colombian cartel torture video. I'm not being a prude or overdramatic when I say the torture descriptions in this book are whatever you're picturing, it's worse, because a normal person isn't able to come up with the stuff that's in this book. I did think it was interesting in terms of like format and structure, and I think there are certain descriptions of things being done to other humans that were like, you're simply not meant to read or witness or hear about or whatever. Like, it's just not supposed to be a thing your brain can conjure. The light is dying and I don't have too much time. Well, not that that's ever stopped me before. I mean, the grainy, like, phone camera after dark look is, you know, that is kind of a look, and I do enjoy that anyway, so. Okay, I do have a surprise book that wasn't in the original haul, but that I did end up reading because it was given to me as a gift. So I did read Shady Characters, The Secret Lives of Punctuation Symbols and Other Typographical Marks. I enjoyed this. I think it's not like particularly my area of interest. If you're super into punctuation and grammar and like linguistic history even, absolutely pick this up. It's delightful. This is a debut, but it does not read like one. The author has a really, really vibrant voice that actually made this quite readable. Something interesting about this book is that it uses colored ink, so that also makes it very visually interesting and enjoyable. It certainly was interesting, and there were a couple pieces of it where I was super into it because it was like more related to other fields that I'm interested in. Okay, the final thing, which is in the thumbnail and I'm sure everybody is itching to hear about because this book is a big deal. I read Bunny by Mona Awad, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This is kind of a dark academia, like, horror book. It's about this woman who is in this MFA program in this kind of weird town, and it's a really prestigious MFA writing program. Everybody else that is in this program with her are super hyper, like, feminine, fake positive, like, kind of self-infantilizing women. I disagree with Miss Margaret Atwood that this is genius. I don't really feel like it's genius. I was kind of hoping that I'd be able to add this to my feminist rage fantasies shelf on Goodreads. I really don't feel like I can, though. This book basically blew its load too early. I mean, not to be crass, but that is like the best way of putting it. It had delicious build-up at the beginning, and then I want to say like this far into the book, we immediately get thrown into, whoa, this crazy shit is happening. I felt like that ended up making the book drag because there wasn't enough build-up to the crazy shit. That made this less exciting and less crazy and less fun for me. Yeah, and initially I was hoping that it was gonna be like a feminist thing because there's like this one like passage where the protagonist, the main character, is talking about like, oh yeah, one of the bunnies was doing this like post-feminist dialogue between herself and various kitchen elements, and that's like the piece of writing that is being discussed in workshop, and I thought that was very funny. Like, I didn't really feel like it had that much to say. I love the symbolism, and if you like books that have animal symbolism, this is definitely one to pick up. This is pretty literary, despite how it's basically a slasher film in a book. But when I actually think about it, I'm not sure how much it has to say. I don't know, like, especially if you're a feminist and you read this and you felt this had a feminist slant, like, please do tell me, like, what your thoughts are on this. Or if you are a feminist and you're like, no, this is trash, like, also tell me that. Because I'm really curious what, like, other people think of this. I was quite bored for the ending of this, honestly. I think, again, it's just because of the lack of build-up. I do not think that it's, like, genius. Unless maybe someone changes my mind and then I have to reread it. Yeah, so that is what I have been reading recently. These were my books for both January and February. Leave me a comment, especially if you've read Bunny. Leave me a comment on what your thoughts are on that. If you've got thoughts on any of these books, if you have questions on my experience with any of them, if you're not sure about reading them or not reading them. Anyway, everybody stay well. Don't be like me. Stay well. Yeah, thanks. Bye.